Hi again. My name is Robert Thomas DeVincentis, and I'm the author of the Book of Kings, where you get aftermath science, which is based on the four subjects: science, nature, man, and God. And I'm the historian of historical origins on those subjects. And today we'll be discussing why the dinosaurs and the ancient animals that roamed the earth weren't killed by a asteroid or comet that hit the earth. Wow. Well, there's only one person right now that's saying that that didn't happen through the aftermath science, and that is that when we look at the dinosaurs and things of that nature, God allowed Adam, and the animals were brought before him, to name the animals. So, in other words, the names of the animals were already given to them by Adam. So, that shows you his intelligence there. That Adam had a super great intelligence. And whatever it is that he called them, that's what it was. So, that's a development also of the language that he already had with God. So, there was a further development. And these animals that roam the world, obviously they're not here now. So we have to make up scientific stories on why they're not here. And they have to label everything so that we know how to think, when in actuality it doesn't correspond, or it doesn't relate to what God says in his word. And we know that there was a great demise here with the flood. And it was the flood that killed the animals that had all the breath of life in them, the breathing animals, that is, that were destroyed by the flood. And that flood, again, was not some kind of local thing, because we know that water seeks its own level. So if it covered the highest mountains on this side of the world, water level is no different on the other. And that's what the Bible proclaims, that the breakers of the deep and these things opened up along with the rain from the heavens, caused this great flood. So what is it that science has to do? They have to bring life here on earth by water from some kind of comet or something, or asteroid that came here, and then it developed and things grew and so forth. Well, we know that none of the elements, and that's what I say in my aftermath science, that none of the elements can not make one living thing. So if you brought them all together and you brought them in a shaker, you couldn't make one living thing out of that. Now, there is pre-existing things that happen here on earth with water, and without water we wouldn't have the life that we have here. But that was all pre-existing. And that also had a life built within it, a predisposition of life. And that was a predisposition of life. In other words, instead of the idea that in evolution, that these animals kept changing and changing, a chicken became a dinosaur at some point in time, which is an erroneous. What happens is, back then, just like any other animals that propagate their species, they come together, male and female for the most part, and those are the ones that are going to bring about the repopulation. And it was the same thing with the dinosaurs, even though you got the bones, and these scientists are great for putting things together, possibly of the structures, if they can find the whole body. But just because you find something doesn't mean that you have the right or the authority to say anything further than that, unless you have some kind of evidence that I explained earlier, that there was a contamination of the evidence here on earth when there's a great flood and things get mixed together. Things got encapsulated quickly, buried deep under the slides of mud and everything else that was happening here. And that's why you can find the whole body of animals that died in that condition. And that's the only thing that makes sense, because if something was laying above ground, it would rot, those kinds of things. And we don't see that. So I hope you're following some kind of chronological order, what I'm saying here. So then what happens then is that, scientific community, we have to have some reason other than God destroying the world by the flood to be the reason why the dinosaurs all got extinguished from the earth. So that means that one thing hit some part of the earth and it covered it all, and nobody could see or breathe or whatever. This is an erroneous belief, and it's, again, a scientific fake, really, when you think about it, that everybody's being taught in the books. And of course, I showed you how science is continually changing their story. I'm the one that said there was no Big Bang Theory, and all of a sudden, now there is no Big Bang Theory, because now they got telescopes that could see greater out in the distances. What, are you kidding? We could see greater out in the distances before, even without a telescope. You could see millions of stars and things out there, the Milky Way, big clusters and stuff like that. So this whole idea that there's something new, no, it's not new. And again, even though they have the great minds and intelligence and calculations of stuff, doesn't prove one iota on the length or how long or how old the universe is. That is completely wrong, and that takes you further and further away from a God that created the world in 6 days. God doesn't need science to add more things to time so he can do something. Things are done instantaneously, and they were done miraculously. Science is not saying miracles brought about something out of nothing. And that's how the universe was created. And science becomes a gift from God, not your God. So we've been over this many, many times, to have to bring people back to earth. This is your place, not somewhere out there. There's nothing else living that you're ever going to find in your lifetime. And even though they got the videos, we found this and we found that. No, you didn't. Listen to the video to its conclusion. They always have some hyped up baloney that they're handing you on a silver platter that you're supposed to believe. And then they harness the comet or whatever, the asteroid or meteor brought life to Earth. And that's how it all developed. It says saying, God made it, and there was a predisposition built into it. And everything that you see eventually passed on, and they became extinct, not because of some one thing. And so what is the ability to come to that conclusion without AI, without quantum AI, that man is smarter, and it can't come to that conclusion because all these different things are being fed the wrong information. So when God said he made the world good, does that mean that it's a disaster waiting to happen continually? No, it is not. We have the 4 seasons. We have frost and snow, heat, intense heat. We have all the different seasons here of the world, and they're dangerous, as I had said. We have floods, earthquakes, and things of that nature. And I went into further again, and we'll talk about this at another time, that there's no such thing as continental drift. This is the biggest erroneous garbage scientifically that came along to proclaim these kinds of things. The earth was not like that. The earth was at different levels of sea level. That's true. But when God, he heaped up the land, those are permanent. Not something that's going to move. Yes, there are platonic plates or whatever that shift and, could cause a tsunami or something or whatever. Or, earthquakes, those kinds of things. But not to the degree of of continental drift. So in my book, the Book of Kings, which deals with that, the circle of the earth, that's another name, or Science, Nature, Man, and God, but it's the Book of Kings. With the little girl on the telescope, you're going to learn all this stuff. And you're going to find out how you've been brought to a dead end by the scientific community here in the 21st century, right? Is that what we're doing here? What is the difference between that and Pharaoh and his magicians and all their happy stuff that they did at the time of Moses, when Moses, was given the information from God about how the whole world came about and everything else? And of course, who's going to believe Moses, right? Is that right? You don't think so? The lawgiver, was he lying about 10 Commandments too? Was that just some other erroneous thing that was made up? And I explained earlier in other talks that, the written word, the 10 Commandments, are greater than the physical word, because that was God's view. That was his intent when he made the world. And it was brought to fruition when Christ comes and lives under the same law that he's saying. So that's how the world basically comes to a terrible end, because it didn't listen to the things that God said, and he broke the commandments and everything else. So these dinosaurs, again, were not killed by an asteroid, and you're going to be very happy to know that. Now, unfortunately, you're going to go to school, and you're going to be in classes, and they're going to want you to know the different time periods of millions of years and so forth. That's what you're going to be taught. That's what you're going to have to know. Well, it's not bad to know some of that stuff, but it's also better to know that there's more information. If you leave this place, no one's going to tell you to argue with the science community or get into a big fight with somebody. No, forget it. This is for your knowledge, and chances are, unfortunately, the way the world is today, not only here in the United States of America, but the rest of the world, you're going to find that it's going to be very difficult to try to get a word in edgewise. But you can be smart. You can have the knowledge of the beauty around you, the trees, the animals, and everything that you see, the beautiful day, the sunsets, the oceans, and everything, the way that God had created, and they're still here, actually. That's for you. So these talks are based on the ability for you to live in peace, to understand that this world is not the way it's described by the scientific community, and that you yourself have to have a reason, and that reason is, and I brought this through, and it's a good thing to note and end on this, that it's through Jesus Christ in the fullness of time, and I've given talks on that as well, that God entered into his own creation via the woman to become a human being. Not only God, but also a human. So therefore, even though we are created lower than the angels, Jesus Christ is a human being, and when that happens, he's greater than the angels. So the second person of the Trinity is greater in that perspective. But of course, there's only one God, and it's a mystery: Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. So at any rate, I hope you realize that. And there's a church that was started when Christ was here, even though it splintered off in different directions. We're not going to believe in the Pope, or we're not going to believe that, the Spirit of God comes from the Father and the Son. These are all things that have caused great things. And then people, we don't want to have, Luther and changing the Bible, taking books out of it, and then having a big problem with things that were ordained by the church for people to rid themselves of sin. And there was a big, misunderstanding of how these things were being held. But just like a marriage, it's sanctified by God. And if a person wants to cheat on his wife or vice versa or whatever, well, then it doesn't make the sacrament any less than it was true from God. It just makes an abuse of that. So indulgences under Luther and all these things doesn't make the indulgence bad in itself. The selling of that would be, but it doesn't take away from the possibilities that if it's done correctly, that you're going to regain some of the ground that you lost through your sins. At any rate, these are great talks, and we don't want to lose sight of those beautiful creatures, the dinosaurs that God created. And there's so much more that could be said about them, but in the meantime, this is for your knowledge to help you get through this world and realize that God really does love you. So thanks again for listening, and I hope to talk to you again. Have a good evening.